The hospital corridors echoed with urgency. Nurses rushed past as a German shepherd barked and pulled against his leash, eyes locked on a door marked ICU. Inside, Officer Claire lay unconscious, bandaged, bruised, fighting for her life after a late-night ambush during patrol. Her colleagues stood helplessly, but her canine partner, Shadow, refused to move. When doctors tried to calm him, he howled. Not out of panic, but as if he knew something they didn't. Hours later, when Claire briefly woke, her first broken whisper wasn't for help or family. It was for her dog. And when Shadow was finally allowed inside, what happened next left even the doctors speechless. Stay till the end. This true bond will shake your heart. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The night was quiet, too quiet for downtown patrol. Streetlights flickered against the wet pavement as Officer Claire Matthews steered her cruiser down an empty industrial lane. Beside her sat Shadow, her canine partner, a powerful German shepherd with alert amber eyes that never missed a movement. A silent alarm had triggered at an old warehouse on the edge of the city. Routine call, they thought. Claire adjusted her flashlight, muttering, "Probably another false alarm." But Shadow's low growl told her otherwise. They parked near the loading dock. The air felt heavy, charged with something unseen. Claire radioed dispatch. Unit 14 checking possible break-in at Jefferson Storage. Static crackled back. Copy. 14. Backup en route. She unlatched the door, and Shadow leapt out silently, nose to the ground, tail stiff. The faint scent of gunpowder drifted through the damp air. Her heartbeat quickened. Inside the warehouse, moonlight filtered through shattered windows. Boxes were scattered, the alarm still blinking red. Claire swept her flashlight across the floor. Footprints. She crouched, motioning Shadow forward. Then a sound as metallic sharp. A figure darted behind a stack of crates. "Police!" Claire shouted. "Show your hands." The answer came in the form of a gunshot. Glass exploded beside her. Instinctively, she pushed Shadow down and rolled behind cover. 2 more shots echoed. She felt a searing pain slice across her forehead, not deep but enough to make the world tilt. Shadow snarled, ears flat, waiting for her command. Blood trickled down her temple as she whispered, "Stay." The gunman stepped into view, weapon trembling. Before he could aim again, Shadow lunged like lightning. The crash of impact sent the weapon skidding across the floor. The man screamed as the dog pinned him down, growling low and fierce. Claire staggered up, weapon drawn, and radioed, "Shots fired! Officer down. Suspect secured." Sirens wailed in the distance. Backup was finally on the way. Claire sank to one knee, vision blurring, hand pressed to her bleeding head. Shadow trotted back to her side, whining softly, his muzzle streaked with dust. She managed a faint smile. "You did good, boy." Her voice cracked as darkness edged her vision. When officers stormed in moments later, they found the suspect cuffed, the weapon recovered, and Shadow lying protectively across his partner's chest, refusing to move. The wail of sirens shattered the night as the ambulance tore through city streets. Inside, the paramedics worked fast. Oxygen masks secured, IV lines dripping, blood pressure dropping. Officer Claire lay pale beneath the flashing red lights, her uniform torn, her pulse weak. One medic pressed gauze to her forehead, murmuring, "Stay with me, officer. Stay with me." But her eyelids fluttered, heavy, unresponsive. Running alongside the stretcher was Shadow, his leash gripped tightly by another officer. The dog's frantic eyes never left her face. Every bump, every jolt made him bark anxiously. When they reached the emergency entrance, doctors rushed to meet them. "Gunshot graze, possible concussion, internal trauma," a medic called out. The doors swung shut, but Shadow lunged forward, nearly breaking free. He didn't understand walls, rules, or procedures. He only understood her. Inside the trauma bay, the scene was chaos. Nurses shouting vitals, machines beeping, the smell of antiseptic filling the air. Claire's body trembled as doctors worked feverishly to stabilize her. Her breathing was shallow, heartbeat irregular. Outside the glass, Shadow pressed his paws to the door, nose fogging the glass. His whines echoed through the hall. People tried to pull him back, but he refused to budge. His eyes stayed fixed on the small movement of her chest rising and falling. Hours passed. The waiting room emptied except for one figure. Shadow curled against the cold tile staring at the ICU doors. Officers brought him water, food, even blankets. He ignored them all. Each time the heart monitor inside the room beeped, his ears twitched. Each time the rhythm faltered, he whimpered softly, tilting his head as if listening to her heartbeat through the walls. Doctors emerged with tired faces. "She's stable for now," one whispered. "But the next 24 hours will decide everything." The officers nodded in silence. Shadow only stared back, his gaze unwavering. No words could explain the invisible bond that held him there, waiting, guarding, believing. The sterile hum of hospital machines filled the quiet ICU. Faint morning light filtered through the blinds, washing the room in pale gold. Officer Claire lay motionless, her face bandaged, her body connected to wires that monitored every fragile breath. For the first time in 12 hours, her fingers twitched. A nurse gasped softly. "Doctor, she's waking up." Claire's eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding her vision. The ceiling lights blurred into a halo of white. Her dry lips parted, but her voice was barely a whisper. "Shadow." The nurse leaned closer. "You're safe now, Officer Matthews. You're in the hospital." Claire blinked slowly, struggling to process. Then she repeated, stronger this time. "Where's Shadow?" The nurse hesitated. "Your K9 partner?" "He's outside. We can't allow animals in ICU." Claire's heart rate spiked on the monitor. "Please," she whispered, panic rising. "He'll think I'm gone. Please just let me see him." Her breathing grew shallow again, her trembling hand gripping the nurse's wrist. "He saved me out there." "He needs to know I'm alive." Doctors rushed in, alarmed by her unstable vitals. "Calm her down," one ordered. But every attempt to soothe her only made things worse. Her pulse raced, tears gathering in her eyes. "He's my partner," she choked out. "He'll never rest until he knows I'm okay." The monitors blared in rhythmic warning. Dr. Reynolds, the attending physician, exchanged a tense glance with the charge nurse. "If this continues, she could relapse into shock," he muttered. "Her stress levels are spiking too high." The nurse bit her lip. "She keeps calling for the dog. It's like she won't fight without him." For a long moment, the room fell silent except for the relentless beeping of the heart monitor. Then the doctor sighed. "Fine. If that's what it takes to keep her stable. Let's bring him in. Just for a minute." The nurse nodded and quietly radioed the officers outside. As the door closed behind her, Claire's lips curved into the faintest smile, a fragile spark of hope returning to her broken face. The hallway outside the ICU buzzed with tension. Nurses whispered among themselves as the decision rippled through the staff. The hospital had never allowed a K9 inside critical care before. But this case was different. The patient's will to live seemed bound to her dog's presence. Dr. Reynolds stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the sunrise creep over the parking lot. "If that animal can calm her, we take the risk," he said finally. 1 minute. No longer. Downstairs, officers gathered around Shadow, who sat motionless, eyes fixed on the elevator doors as if waiting for a command that never came. His leash hung loose. He didn't need restraint. He hadn't eaten, barely slept. Every instinct in him screamed that his partner was fighting for her life. When a nurse approached holding sterile gloves and a mask, she knelt beside him and whispered, "You ready to see her, boy?" His ears perked, tail still. He didn't bark, didn't move. He just understood. They led him down the narrow corridor toward the ICU. Every nurse, every patient along the way stopped to watch, phones lowered, hearts pounding. The sound of his paws echoed softly against the tile floor, steady and sure. It wasn't just a dog walking those halls. It was loyalty in its purest form. At the ICU door, Dr. Reynolds gave one final nod. "Keep him calm. The moment she reacts, we step out." The nurse slowly pushed open the door. Machines beeped rhythmically in the dim light. Claire lay still, pale, fragile, surrounded by tubes and monitors. For a heartbeat, Shadow froze, then took a single step forward. His nose twitched, catching the faint scent of her. The room held its breath. Nurses stood silently, hands clasped. No one spoke as Shadow padded closer, each step softer than the last, his gaze locked entirely on the woman who had once shielded him from bullets. He reached the side of her bed, and the air itself seemed to pause. The ICU doors slid open with a soft hiss. The hall grew silent as Shadow was led in by 2 officers. His paws clicked gently on the tile floor. each step slow and uncertain. The scent of antiseptic filled the air, but he ignored everything, his focus locked on one room ahead. The faint beeping of monitors called to him like a heartbeat he knew by memory. Nurses paused mid-step, astonished to see the uniformed K9 entering such a sterile, sacred space. Inside, the lights were dim, machines blinking steadily beside Officer Claire's bed. She looked fragile, swallowed by white sheets and IV lines. The doctor gave a silent nod. "Go ahead," whispered the nurse, her voice trembling. The officers unclipped Shadow's leash. For a moment he just stood there, staring. Then quietly he padded forward. His nose twitched as he approached the bed. The soft whir of machines faded under the sound of his slow breathing. He lifted his paw onto the mattress and sniffed her hand. Her fingers moved. It was barely noticeable, but everyone saw it. A sharp gasp escaped the nurse. Claire's eyelids fluttered, her pulse monitor steadied. Shadow whined softly and pressed his muzzle against her wrist, breathing her in, reassuring himself she was real. Her trembling hand rose weakly, fingertips brushing his fur. The doctor froze, staring at the monitor as her oxygen levels began to climb. "Her vitals are improving," he whispered in disbelief. For a long moment no one spoke. It was as if the entire room held its breath. Shadow rested his head gently on her arm, closing his eyes. Claire's lips parted, a faint sound escaping. "Good boy." Her words were fragile, almost lost in the hum of the machines, but Shadow heard them. He let out a deep exhale and stayed still, his breathing syncing with hers. Tears filled the eyes of the nurses. Even the doctor, hardened by years of emergencies, blinked rapidly. In that quiet, sterile room, a miracle unfolded, not through medicine or machines, but through loyalty. The connection between them pulsed stronger than any IV line. For the first time since the ambush, Claire's body truly began to fight back. For a few moments, no one dared to move. The hum of machines filled the air, soft and steady. Shadow remained motionless beside Claire's bed, his head resting lightly on her arm. Eyes closed as if praying. The doctor, still watching the monitors, blinked twice. "Look at her heart rate," he murmured. The beeping rhythm, once faint and erratic, now beat strong and even. "It's stabilizing. All on its own." The nurse covered her mouth, her eyes wide. "That's impossible," she whispered. But it was happening right in front of them. Claire's breathing deepened, color slowly returning to her pale cheeks. Shadow's tail gave a single slow wag, his ears twitching at every sound she made. "It's like he brought her back," said one of the paramedics who had returned to check in. No one laughed or disagreed. The room felt sacred now, touched by something unseen. When Claire's eyes fluttered open again, they met his. Her lips trembled. "You came," she whispered, barely audible. Shadow let out a soft whine and nudged her hand with his nose. The small gesture shattered the dam, holding back the nurse's tears. Even the senior doctor had to look away, pretending to check a chart to hide the lump in his throat. Minutes passed like hours. Every line on the monitors strengthened. Claire's body, moments ago so fragile, now seemed to regain its fight. "Her vitals are holding," the doctor confirmed, amazement in his tone. "I've seen patients respond to voices, but never." This. Shadow refused to move. He stood guard like a statue, eyes fixed on her face. Every so often he'd breathe softly near her cheek, as if reminding her that he was still there, that she wasn't alone. The doctor finally spoke again, voice hushed with awe. "Whatever bond they share, it's beyond science." The staff exchanged glances. Silent yet united in one unspoken truth. A miracle had just unfolded, and it had 4 paws. The days that followed felt like something out of a quiet miracle. The ICU, once filled with constant alarms and rushed footsteps, grew calm. Officer Claire's vitals stabilized. The nurses who had once whispered about her slim chances now smiled when they entered the room. And always, always at her side was Shadow. He refused to leave, curling at the foot of her bed each night, eyes half open, guarding even her dreams. Every morning the same ritual played out. The nurse would arrive to change her bandages and Shadow would lift his head, watching every move, making sure no one hurt her. When Claire stirred, he'd rise slowly, tail brushing the floor, pressing his nose gently to her palm. "He hasn't left that spot since she came out of surgery," one nurse whispered. "It's like he knows she's healing." Claire's voice grew stronger each day. Sometimes she'd talk to him softly, stories about their first patrol together, about how he'd once stolen her sandwich mid-shift. The nurses pretended not to listen, but every word drew smiles. When she tried to sit up for the first time, Shadow stood instantly, body tense, ready to help, though he didn't know how. "Easy, boy," she chuckled weakly, wincing through the pain. "I'm okay." Doctors were stunned. "Her recovery rate is incredible," said Dr. Reynolds during rounds. "Most patients in her condition would still be on bed rest. Whatever strength she's drawing from, it's powerful." Claire smiled faintly. "It's loyalty," she said. "He saved me once in the warehouse. Now he's saving me again." At night, when the lights dimmed and the hospital grew still, the two of them rested in perfect silence. The monitor's beeping was steady now, a rhythm that matched the rise and fall of Shadow's breathing. For everyone who passed that room, it became clear. Medicine could heal wounds, but love and loyalty could heal the soul. The steady rhythm of recovery was soon interrupted by a knock on the hospital door. Two detectives from the department stepped in, their faces a mix of relief and duty. "Good to see you awake, Officer Matthews," said Detective Harris, offering a soft smile. "You gave everyone quite a scare." Claire adjusted herself upright, wincing slightly. Shadow immediately rose, standing protectively beside her bed. Harris glanced down at the dog, shaking his head with admiration. "That partner of yours is something else," he said. "He didn't just save your life. He helped us catch the men behind the attack." Claire's brows furrowed. "You got them?" The second detective, a younger man, nodded. The suspect Shadow took down at the warehouse confessed. It wasn't random and it was planned. They were targeting the police shipment stored in that facility. You and Shadow stopped them before they could steal the weapons cache. Claire's jaw tightened. The memory of the ambush flashed before her. The gunfire, the chaos, the blur of pain. She reached for Shadow's fur, grounding herself in his warmth. "Then he's the real hero," she murmured. The detectives exchanged glances. "We'll be recommending him for official commendation," Harris said. "A Medal of Valor. The department owes him everything." Shadow tilted his head at the sound of their voices, tail swaying slightly, unaware that they were speaking of honors and awards. All he cared about was the woman he'd sworn to protect. Claire smiled faintly, eyes glassy with emotion. "Just promise me one thing," she said softly. "When you write that report, don't call him a dog. Call him my partner." The detectives nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am," Harris said. "Your partner. The one who never gave up." The day of the ceremony dawned bright and calm, sunlight streaming across the police department courtyard. Rows of officers stood in crisp formation, medals gleaming on their uniforms. At the center stage, a small podium waited, its microphone adorned with blue ribbons and the emblem of valor. Officer Claire, now out of uniform and dressed in a simple navy suit, walked slowly toward the front. A cane supported her step, but her eyes were steady, glowing with quiet pride. Beside her trotted Shadow, tail held high, chest puffed out as if he knew this moment was his. The crowd erupted into soft applause. Officers smiled, civilians stood, and even the chief saluted as the announcer's voice echoed. "For extraordinary bravery and unwavering loyalty in the line of duty, the Medal of Valor is hereby awarded to K9 Officer Shadow." A hush fell as Claire knelt down, tears glinting in her eyes. She placed the gleaming medal around Shadow's neck, her fingers trembling. "You're not just my partner," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're my guardian, my reason I'm still here." Shadow gazed at her with calm, loyal eyes, then leaned forward and gently rested his head against her shoulder. The crowd rose in silent awe. It wasn't just a ceremony anymore. It was a love story between courage and faith. Reporters captured every frame, but no photograph could capture what everyone felt. That invisible thread between a wounded soul and her devoted protector. The chief's voice cracked as he concluded. "Today we don't just honor a K9. We honor the bond that keeps us human." The applause thundered, echoing across the courtyard. And amid the sea of uniforms, one woman and her loyal dog stood together, symbols of courage, healing, and a love that refused to break. A year later, the city streets buzzed under the warm glow of a new sunrise. Patrol cars rolled out from the precinct, engines humming softly. Among them, one familiar cruiser stood out. Its window rolled down and the silhouette of Shadow sitting proudly in the passenger seat. Beside him, Officer Claire Matthews adjusted her vest, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Back where we belong, huh, partner?" she said quietly. Shadow barked once, tail thumping against the seat. The world had changed since that night, but their bond hadn't. Their return to duty made local headlines. Cameras followed them through community patrols, schools, and parades. Children rushed to pet Shadow, and Claire would always laugh, telling them, "Careful, he's a hero now." But in private, when the cameras stopped flashing, she often looked at him in quiet gratitude. "You didn't just save me," she whispered one evening as they sat on a hill overlooking the city lights. "You reminded me what's worth fighting for." The video cut to real hospital footage. The moment Shadow had rested his head on her arm, the beeping monitors growing stronger. Viewers around the world would later describe it as the most heart-stirring moment they'd ever seen. Even months later, doctors still spoke of it in disbelief. "I can't explain it medically," Dr. Reynolds said during an interview. But sometimes healing comes from love, not medicine. As the video faded to the present, Claire and Shadow walked down a quiet street together. The evening sun painted long shadows behind them. Claire reached down, brushing her hand over his head. "We don't need words," she said softly. "You listen with your heart." The final scene slowed, Shadow looking up at her, eyes full of loyalty framed against the setting sun. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us, and where are you watching from? Because loyalty like this deserves to be seen around the world.